Joining Samin in our live discussion today on food, art, culture, and cooking are Pardis and Frank Stitt, who are the owners of restaurants Bottega Cafe, Chez Fonfon, and Highlands Bar and Grill, which received the James Beard Foundation Award for Outstanding Restaurant in 2018. We're thankful to these esteemed culinary artists for being here on this virtual platform, and we look forward to a lively and inspiring conversation uninterrupted. Please remember that there will be a short Q&A with the audience at the end of the program. And now I'm happy to turn it over to Samin, Frank, and Pardis.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, Samin.
Hello. I'm so happy to see you.
So happy to see you.
Thanks for that warm introduction, Eric.
You're most welcome.
It's nice to spend a Sunday afternoon with you, Samin.
So nice to see you. The only thing I regret is that this is the second time I've been thwarted from coming to Birmingham in person. So I'm going to have to make it. A third time will be the charm.
That's right. That's right. We'll do it again.
We've got some plans for you when you do make it.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Already figured out the itinerary.
You know, Samin, I just wanted to start off by saying that when I got your book, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, took it home, read it, the next day I went into the restaurant and it was like a manifesto of, okay, guys, this is it. Everything's got to be in balance. You know, you start off with salt, then there's fat, there's acid, which is so important, and then heat. And so I was writing these notes in all the kitchens. And
Stir, taste, adjust became a mantra.
yes. Because, you know, it seems kind of self-evident, perhaps, but it is so elemental to good cooking that you really do. And the one thing that was kind of revolutionary was your amount of salt of cooking. And it really, you know, pasta water has got to taste like the sea. But you use that, you've taken that to a whole nother level, and it's just brilliant. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, coming from you, like an established chef, you know, that's the highest compliment, honestly, because that's really what I was aiming to do, was to translate what I saw for all of those years happening in restaurant kitchens that I felt wasn't being translated for home cooks, you know. And my journey started in that way. You know, I grew up eating really delicious home cooking, right? My mom is an extraordinary cook, made delicious Persian food my whole childhood, but I didn't really cook as a kid. And then I sort of had this series of serendipitous events that brought me into Chez Panisse, first as a busser, and then like curiosity brought me into the kitchen. But I had no training. And so they gave me this stack of cookbooks. And they said, go read these books. This is how you're going to like build a foundation. So I went home and I read books and I cooked from books, and then I would come to work. But what I was watching the chefs do was so different than what I saw in the books, because people didn't follow recipes. You know, they didn't have amounts and measurements and timers and, you know, rulers. They used their senses. And so, they were sort of always just, and these words always kept being repeated: salt, fat, acid, salt, fat, acid, salt, fat, acid. And so it probably took about 2 years for me to notice this pattern, that these were these things that they were always sort of navigating the kitchen by. And they were kind of like the 4 points of the compass. And one day I went to the chef, who really is my mentor. His name is Chris Lee. And I said, you know, I think I see something. I think I see like salt, fat, acid, heat. And he was like, yeah, we all know that. Like, that's duh. He's like, and I was like, why didn't anyone tell me? It's not in any of these books, you know, like it's not written anywhere. It seemed like this big sort of, if they all knew it and it wasn't in any of the books, it felt like I was being betrayed if nobody was explaining it. So if nobody had explained it to me, I felt like nobody was explaining it to anybody else. And so I wanted to be the person who then could explain it to people. But it still took me a long time to sort of take in all of the information, understand it, and then be able to distill it into a really simple philosophy. So to hear that it landed with you, you know, that's like, it means that came full circle. So that's awesome.
It landed. And I think also with Frank, you know, we always talk about taste, but what does that mean? You know, what are we talking about? And so I just think that just really, I mean, I just feel like that helped you to really explain to our cooks, what they're looking for,
And it's
or what they should
so,
be looking for.
and acidity is so important
Mhm.
in whether you're talking about making wine or cooking, and I just think that that's something that some Americans have been a little reluctant to embrace, that acidity is a really good thing. It's all got to be
Totally.
in balance. And a little bit of vinegar often just wakes up, whatever it is that you're cooking, a soup or a sauce, whatever.
Absolutely. I remember for me, like the big moment was when I made a carrot soup, which like you think of carrots being really sweet and it had onions in it, all this sweet stuff. And the chef told me to put some vinegar. I thought it tasted so good. He's like, oh, it needs some acid, put some vinegar in it. I was like, are you crazy? Like, why would I put vinegar in this soup? That's going to ruin it.
But
And then
but
I put,
but the excess of that is equally bad. If
Right.
right now a lot
yeah,
of cooks want to put too much vinegar in something and they think, oh well, isn't this interesting? That's like, yeah, no, it's
yeah.
way too tart.
Yeah, totally. So, but it is, and I think the language, in some ways, like people are familiar with salt and fat. So acid, I think in a lot of ways is the sort of most clinical sounding one. It sounds like a word from like a lab, but, but it is, I think, in maybe the greatest service I've done for people is to introduce them to that idea. And the thing about it that I always try to translate is like, you actually already know, like we already, I think of it, I grew up in San Diego eating a lot of Mexican food. And so, when I go eat tacos and burritos, I already instinctively know like, oh, this needs a little more salsa. This needs a little more sour cream. I want a little more salt in my guacamole. That means I'm adjusting, the fat is the sour cream, the acid is the sour cream, the acid is the salsa. You already know because when you're making that perfect bite, you're already adjusting your salt, fat, and acid. You just don't have the vocabulary for it. So all I'm doing is giving people a vocabulary to put words to the thing that they already know so that then they can expand that thinking to everything else that they're doing in the kitchen.
Mhm. Well,
Right.
you may not know that I was at UC Berkeley back in the '70s, and Chez Panisse really opened my mind to what passionate cooking and food in that kind of country French world of Elizabeth David and Richard Olney. And Alice introduced me with a letter so that I could work as Richard's assistant. And so it's amazing how Chez Panisse has opened so many of our eyes and hearts to this thing that we love so much of food and cooking and farmers and all of the interconnectedness there.
It really, I mean, I feel so lucky. And for me, I didn't grow up knowing anything about fancy restaurants or Chez Panisse. And so it really was sort of this happy accident that I ended up coming to Berkeley to go to college and finding out about this restaurant and saving up to eat there and falling in love with it and working there without really understanding its place in like American culinary history. And then once I started working there, I started to understand what a place it was and like the massive community that it was at the center of and part of. And now, next year will be its 50th birthday. I mean, 50 years, like the amount of people who've passed through there. And I just remember, I think it was 2001. So I had been working there for a year and a half, 2 years. And it was the 30th anniversary. It was this huge party on the UC Berkeley campus for 500 people. And we were all cooking. We had like 20 lambs set up, spit roasting. We were making like huge pots of bouillabaisse, and people had come, alumni had come back from all over the world to cook. And it was like Martha Stewart was there and George Lucas. And I had just graduated college. It just felt like the most grand party I had ever been to. And I remember feeling like, wow, like if you are the best, if you do something the best, if you're the best at the world at what you do, you're connected into all other people in the world who are the best at the world at what they do. And so it felt so amazing to me to feel like I could be part of this incredible community. And that has been at the core of what that restaurant like really has given to me, is that sense of community, of of the farmers, of the artisans, of the people who make the copper lanterns that sit on the table. And that sense of sort of being part of something is, I think, what really guides a big part of my work and what it is that I try to put out in the world. And so I had no idea that you were here in the 70s. And that is so awesome, Frank. That is so awesome. I love that. So does that mean that then, and Alice introduced you to Richard Olney. So then did you, then at that point, was he in France? Did you go to France?
Well, actually, he was dividing his time between London and Solestuca in Provence. And so I met him in London. Jeremiah Tower had just come over. He had left Chez Panisse half a year earlier. And so they were producing a book every, I think, 9 months, a 20-volume series for Time Life, the Good Cook series.
Oh, I have them. They're right here above my desk.
Aren't they wonderful?
Yeah, I love them. Should I take one down and show everyone?
Well, yeah.
They're amazing. They're legendary. Hold on.
Frank still uses them.
Oh, they're so amazing.
You may see my hands and somebody washing shard in the vegetable one.
Oh, really? Oh my God, you're a
Yeah.
legend. Wait, hold on. I got to take another book down so I can reach.
We
There's
have ours closer. I don't know what.
okay here.
Well, looking.
Sorry.
Okay.
I have them all stacked. They're so. Okay, here we go. It's like too exciting. They're all gonna fall now. Okay.
Don't hurt yourself, Samin.
Okay, here's pasta.
Okay.
Yes.
They're just like these amazing, and they have these amazing end papers. Look at them. They're so cool.
And the step-by-step photos.
All the step-by-step photos.
Mhm.
They're so cool. I
Mhm.
love these. It's like it's been a life project for me to collect them all. They just have the best. They're the best. Yeah.
They are the best, and they're still pertinent.
They're totally amazing. That's so cool. You got to work on these?
Yeah, well, very briefly, and then I met Richard and was his assistant for just a short while at the house in Provence. I took a quick little month trip to Greece and then came back. And then he introduced me to Julia Child and Simca Beck. And I was Simca's assistant at her cooking school after she had lunch that I helped Richard cook at his house. And so that was a start of me falling in love with French food.
How old were you?
I think I was 22.
Wow.
22, 23.
Wow. That's so amazing. That's so incredible. That's so special. Oh my God.
No, when you come here, we've got to talk more about
You
that.
guys
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it sounds like in a way, Chez Panisse intersected in your life story about the same age as it intersected in my life story. So yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome.
Samin, talking about your connectedness and feeling that connection with community, it seems like that feeds into your sense of collaboration with others because obviously with the Netflix series based on the book, and then your podcasts, which have been amazing, I have to say,
Thank you.
and sort of a saving grace for I think so many of us during the last several months. And so will you talk about your sense of collaboration and, just your working relationship with Wendy?
Absolutely.
Illustrator.
She's amazing. Well, Wendy McNaughton is the wonderful illustrator who illustrated my book, and we've become really close friends over the years. And also I now make this podcast with another friend, Rishikesh Hirway. Actually, just this morning I was talking with somebody about the dangers and pleasures of working with your you guys know working with your loved ones.
Yes. We know that all too well.
Yes. Because it's like both incredibly gratifying and also can be sometimes dangerous. And I would be curious to hear from you, but I feel like because I go to a lot of therapy, I have learned the term dual relationship, and so like I have to always be aware, like
down.
Yeah,
Dual relationship.
I have to be aware, like which relationship are we in any given moment? Like, are we in friend mode, or are we in work mode? And like, and just even whether or not I'm communicating that, at least being clear in my own self, like where my feeling or where my reaction to a certain thing is coming from. And so trying to be really clear and communicative with people about that. But I think I've gotten better at it over the years. And it's just made things a lot stronger because for Wendy and I, we didn't know each other. The way we met was I was a fan of her work when she was sort of just leaving advertising. She had this blog that she would put up her illustrations on, and I started following it, and I thought it was amazing. And she didn't do a ton of food stuff, but I just loved the style And because she made a lot of like infographics and little sort of charts that explained things. And I knew that this book would need to have charts that explained things. Oh yeah, totally. And I knew it was about teaching and explaining information in multiple ways. Like I knew I would want to do it, using words, obviously through writing, but also I would want to do it visually. And then there's a third way to do it, sort of, which is like with words and visuals, which is the infographic. And so, and and also she's very funny and whimsical, and can take things like science and chemistry and make it not intimidating, which to me, science is really hard and intimidating. And so how do I talk to people about things that seem like really complicated and make them seem not complicated or fun or inviting? And I really wanted to strike that tone, but I didn't know her. So I wrote her this insane email, like a crazy fan letter. And the subject line said, "You might think I'm stalking you." I was like stalking her on like Instagram and stuff. And then it said, "And you be right." And then
And she opened it anyway.
yeah. We had a bunch of friends in common. And so then I like wrote her this like very flattering email. And then I made one of the things she does, she makes all these Venn diagrams. So I made a Venn diagram of all the ways that our lives overlapped and all the people that we knew in common. And I think like I got her, I charmed her. So we ended up meeting, and it turned out that she didn't really know anything about food, and she wasn't really it wasn't really one of her areas of interest at all. And so I think she more was just curious and interested. So she was like, okay, let's try this. And so we basically we illustrated and wrote like a mini version of the book as our proposal, and we sold it. And then she draws from life. She does not draw from photos, and she has to understand something before she can draw it. So since she didn't really know anything about cooking, I had to essentially teach her so that then she could understand everything. So she became like a guinea pig for me on the way to, which was this great sort of test, because if I couldn't teach Wendy, how could I teach somebody who wasn't standing right in front of me? And so I would go to her house and we would cook these dinners, and she would draw them. So the very first time I showed up there, I like opened the cabinet to look for, I don't know, salt or something. And it was just like 40 boxes of Power Bars. Like that's all she ate. She like did not cook. And so it really became my great pleasure, because now she really takes a lot of pride and pleasure in cooking. And she makes a pot of beans every week, and she makes beautiful frittatas and salads. And like, she's so confident. Her mom wrote me this beautiful letter, like thanking me because her dream came true of like cooking a holiday meal with her daughter, which like, so it's cool. Like I've seen it firsthand affect somebody's life, and that's been really amazing. But to me, like I have, cooking is it's social work, like you get to cook in community with people, you get to eat in community with people, and writing is so lonely, like and so writing is about half of what I do. So the other stuff that I do, I always want to do it with people. And it's really like a great pleasure for me to get to like, I feel like stuff's always better when you get to do it with people who bring other stuff to it. And yeah, they challenge you. And yeah, I don't know. It's you they think of things you don't think of, and I don't know. Like yeah, I don't know. It's good. I feel like collaboration's amazing.
I want to hear a little bit about the new book, What to Cook, and some of the inspiration behind that. Can you share a little bit of that?
Of course, yeah. So well, what's funny is everybody was like, well, what's next? They always want to know, like, what's next? And I'm like, I'm tired.
Always.
I'm like, I'm so tired. I don't have another idea. It's going to take me forever. It took me 17 years to come up with this one. Like, I don't know. How am I going to do another one? And everybody was like, you need another show. You need another book. You need another. And I was like, I'm going to have to take like years off so I can come up with something. And then I literally took one day. I was in the very back of my mind, I had various ideas, but one day I had, maybe this was like 2 summers ago, I took one day off, and it was like a really hot day, and I was just laying in my bed, like staring at the ceiling in the middle afternoon. And I was like, oh my, and it was just this weird thing where like all of these things, it was like all the puzzle pieces fell into place in my head. And at first I understood it actually as a TV show. And then I sort of turned it inside out, and I realized it could be a book. So because at first I was trying to think of it as a TV show, and I thought, well, most cooking TV shows, right? They they the way, like, it's called stand and stir, which is like, the person standing at the counter and makes a recipe, you watch it, and then in theory, like, you go make that recipe, right? Like, if you imagine like a
Right.
typical Ina Garten episode or whatever,
Which
right?
is
Yeah, or Julia Child or whatever, right? Like, that's that, they call that stand and stir. And so everybody, like all the Netflix and everybody, was like, your next show should be a stand and stir, like, that's what we want from you. And in my heart, I've been like, I don't want to do that. That's not who I am. Like, my whole thing is I want to go be with people. I want to show people the world. Like, I'm not that kind of a cook. Like, I am here to cook with people. So I was like, how can I turn stand and stir inside out? Like, how can I also, like, nobody cooks like that. Nobody is like, well, what should I make today? Like, that does not reflect reality. And so I was like, how could I turn this inside out as a TV show to actually reflect reality? And so then I was like, well, the way that it would work is if I went into actual people's homes, right? And or any scenario, if maybe not even a home, maybe it's like a community kitchen or Meals on Wheels kitchen or a hospital kitchen or whatever, like any sort of, or going camping with someone, um, and see their real circumstances and their what they actually have on hand, and then based on what's actually there, how much time they have, what resources they have, and like what they want to eat or who's coming over for dinner, then together we formulate a plan, and I teach them like chef thinking, and I say, like, this is what we should make based on these constraints, right? And so really then you learn how to think. And so, and then the viewer also then learns how to think, which is much more valuable than like, here's how to make a potato gratin. Like, because if you want to make a potato gratin, you just Google that potato gratin. There's like 90 million recipes. I want to teach you something new. And so then I was like, oh, that's an interesting, I was like, that's cool. And you could have endless episodes of that because there's just endless scenarios, right? There's just endless, every day is a new day. Every kitchen is a new kitchen. Everybody's reality is different every day. And so I realized there is like a pattern to that, and that there are like sort of four basic constraints that, as professional cooks, in the same way that like salt, fat, acid, heat was translating how professional cooks think about how to cook, and that we use these four elements to understand how to cook, that professional cooks enter any kitchen and sort of navigate ourselves based on these four constraints of time, ingredients, resources, and preferences. And so, like in pre-COVID times, say, for most home cooks, like on an average weekday, the typical constraint would have been time. Like, if you get home at 5:45 p.m. and your kids are gonna like lose their mind, and you may have 25 minutes to get dinner on the table. That's your constraint, is like, what can I make in 25 minutes? Whereas now, like, and certainly at the beginning of quarantine, when things were really, really, really tricky, right? Getting your hands on any groceries were really tricky. The main constraint for most people was ingredients. You're like, well, what do I make? How do I make bread without flour or yeast or whatever, right? Like, how do I make this without this? How do I make this without this? So in a weird way, I actually think this year that COVID has actually prepared, like, or this, the experience of cooking this year has uh, maybe made people a little bit more familiar with the idea of constraint as something that we all face. And so, but yeah, resources, like a great example of a resource limitation is Thanksgiving, which, like, everyone knows, like, the main resource limitation on Thanksgiving is oven space, right? Because you got it, like, everything on the Thanksgiving table practically comes out of the oven. You're like, the turkey, the pie, like the casserole, the stuffing, the this, and you're like, how do I? And they're all different temperatures, and you're like, how do I do it? And it's not all going to work or whatever, right? And so it's like, if your oven is your limitation, then you have to make other choices based on that limitation. So, and sometimes it's like you have too many tomatoes. What do you do? Other times it's like you don't have enough cheese. What do you do? So those are the realities that we all deal with in our daily basis. And those are also what chefs who come to the restaurant and, like, they need to use this up before it goes bad, or today this cook didn't show up, and that person we're putting on the grill is not that strong, so we can't make the grilled dishes that hard today. Those are that's the kind of stuff that we're thinking about too. So it's just kind of translating that and teaching people how to be a little bit more dynamic and flexible, and so that you're not feeling bad when you can't like replicate the like 10 dishes in this month's issue of whatever magazine, because guess what, like that's not based in reality. That's
Right.
based in a fake kitchen.
It's a little bit like, you go to the market, and that informs the menu. You don't have a menu and then go to the market,
Totally.
and that's just how I think intuitive cooks work.
Totally, exactly. And so, I mean, for a lot of people, there you go. That's the ingredients. And for me, that's absolutely it. Until like, and then like toward the end of the week when I'm like, well, this stuff's rotting, or like this person's coming over and that's a vegan, so like I can't use that, or whatever. And then you're like, well, then if the vegan's coming over, then that becomes the anchor around which I build the menu. So like each day or each meal, it sort of shifts a little bit, but absolutely, it's like based for me I would say on the average, like day-to-day basis, it's the ingredients are my like most sort of regular constraint. Yeah.
Well, in your travels, and even thinking about where you want to travel, as far as food markets, for me, I certainly, I think about the Venice market, and I think of Barcelona, and I think of Nice. And these places are some of the most exciting places on the planet for food, for somebody that just to go and to see how the vendors interact with the local people. What are some of your experiences from your travels, and of where you've been and where you want to go?
Well, probably my favorite market city that I've ever been to is Mexico City. And I just feel, and also I feel like I could go to Mexico City 3,000 more times and still not even I mean, it's so huge and so just like, there's just so much. And I feel like I could go there countless more times and not even get to see everything that I would want to see. But I just, like there are so many amazing ingredients in Mexican cooking that I have not even begun to, understand or have in relationship with. But I am a crazy fool for beans, and I'm a crazy fool for peppers. So like every time I go there, I'm just like, I'm just like filling all my bags with beans and peppers. And praying that I don't get stopped at the border, which I always do. But I'm always like, Bob, it's totally safe. Totally safe. These beans, totally safe. Yeah.
I love that. I have a problem. I buy cucumbers. Whenever we're traveling, if I see nice cucumbers, I collect cucumbers and peppers too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have like more peppers than I could ever. I don't even know. Like I have 70 kinds of peppers downstairs, and I'm like, what am I doing with all of this? But yeah, pepper, and like it's just, and also sometimes I just love going to see what is happening, because a lot of this stuff is fresh stuff that I wouldn't even begin to know what to do with or how to use. But I'm just like, oh my gosh, like one of the most amazing sort of sensory experiences in Mexico City is when the banana leaf vendor is like preparing the banana leaves to be sold, and they're like it's kind of like reminds me of the Persian carpet vendor because they're kind of like it's almost like they're like airing out a carpet, and it's this huge piece of banana leaf that's just like mega thing, and it's just you kind of imagine like, wow, somebody's gonna take that home and turn it into 1,000 tamales. Like it's just, I love thinking about what people are gonna make and all the smells and the tastes, and it's such a sensory delight. So to me, that's definitely, I would say, one of the most incredible places I've ever been. And I've never been to Southeast Asia, so I would really love to visit like Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, anywhere over there, Malaysia, Singapore. I've heard like obviously has like incredible markets and incredible like food stalls. But no, I'm like I would just eat everything. I would eat everything. Yeah, it would be amazing. So.
Well, are there any other markets that you like, stateside or elsewhere in the world?
The Ferry Building, San Francisco.
Oh yeah, of course, I love the San Francisco Ferry Building. I mean, I also am I have become such an insane person. I've become like so. I'm the person like I am. This is, I think, the like unique intersection of my Iranianness and my like Japanese upbringing, it's like really turned me into the like most extreme version of that person who will cross a bridge for a tomato. You know, like like my mom. So like so my mom would drive across Southern California like 200 miles for bread. Like to get Persian bread, you know, there's in Southern California there was this maybe not 200 miles, 88 miles to Irvine, to this bakery that would made sangak bread, which is like for the viewers who might not know, the it's like sang in Farsi means little like river stones, and so sangak bread is like traditionally baked in these ovens that are like lined with these river stones, these pebbles basically. So they're like these flat breads that are kind of like these dimpled flat breads, and they're these long, like delicious, and you get them warm, and they have like sesame seeds and nigella seeds on them. But in Iran, you never eat day old bread. Like you just go down to the bakery in the morning and you get fresh, warm bread. And so there's a place called the Wholesome Choice in Irvine. It's like what used to be just a regular grocery store, like a Safeway, that was then like bought by or like taken over by an Iranian family and turned into a Middle Eastern grocery, but it's the size of a whole grocery store. And so they have, it's not just like a little grocery, it's like a big grocery. And so they have a whole thing that's just the sangak bread. But then they have a limit. It's like 2 per person. And so and so my mom would like put all the children in the car so that we could all stand in line, so we could get the max, you know, 2, so, so we could get 8 instead of just 2.
So smart. So
Yeah,
smart.
yeah. So like it's like Iranian, I feel like, I mean, maybe it's more of an immigrant thing but like it's definitely like I have known many Iranians who will drive very far for a thing. And now I'm that person who's like, there's a farmer's market like literally a block from my house, like a 90-second walk. And I will drive all the way to the other side of town because the other tomatoes from the other farm that's like 15 seconds away from that farm, I like them better. Like, so
I like
this
that
is
kind of
not an
crazy
answer
though.
for your specific question, except that like I'm the crazy person who has like the one stall in each place where I already know that I want to go to that. Because like, for example, in New York, like I really love in Chelsea Market, there's seed and mill tahini, which I think is really delicious. And they have make
In the
really,
pantry.
yeah, they make the like really tasty halva too. And then also in Chelsea Market, there's a place called Miznon, which makes the falafel sandwiches and like the craziest, fluffiest pita I've ever had in my whole life. And so like I will cross all the way to the West Highway to go get, like I'm just like, it's that, yeah. So I don't know, if you name a city, I'll tell you like what the 3 weird places on all the like different places are that I would like to go to. But yeah,
How about
that's who I am.
you ever go to Houston?
I haven't been to Houston since I was probably 5 years old. So tell me, what should I go?
Well,
What
no,
should I do?
everyone just talks about. We haven't been to Houston in years, but there are so many. I mean, there's access to every kind of food you can possibly imagine. Every culture seems to be represented, and so it's we need to add that to the list.
Meet up in Houston.
Yeah.
Amazing, totally.
We're talking about traveling for food. You know, you and I spoke. I don't know how many.
I think it was maybe 3 years ago.
3 years ago. Yes.
I think so. Maybe 4. I don't even remember now.
I don't either. But we had talked about. You were asking. We were talking about Nowruz, Persian New Year, and you know, I was born in Houston, but grew up in the South. I don't really consider Houston the South, but in Birmingham. And so for my parents, and I guess my mother specifically, to seek out ingredients, you know, when she didn't have the fresh, she had all of her dried herbs and her pistachios and everything else from Iran. But when she needed cilantro, you know, and there wasn't cilantro or there wasn't dill and there weren't other, you know, so many other things that the family would take a trek to Atlanta, which was, you know, just over 2 hours away. To fill the larder, I guess, at home, refrigerator. And so that might be a little bit of an Iranian thing too. So
I love that. Yeah, it's amazing.
So I wanted, just getting back to the Netflix show, just because that is, the book, so amazing and has reached so many people, but I feel like that the show has such a broad, must have such
It
a
really
broad
does.
reach. And so for people to be able to connect, with you and then with the book, through that, how did you choose where you were going to travel? I mean, how did all of that come about?
Yeah, I mean, it's so making a television show is no joke. And I think there's the version you have there's the dream version you have in your head of how you think and hope it will go, and then there's reality. So which is like budgets and calendars, and also like if other people on Netflix were already going to a country, a different show was already going to a certain place, like we couldn't also go there. So there were certain limitations like that. But what I knew for me, Italy was going to be really important because I had lived there. So I knew for at least one of the episodes, either salt or fat, I wanted to go to Italy. And I really wanted to do fat in Italy. So I'm glad we got to do that. I, I always had thought the other thing I originally had conceived was that we would go to multiple countries. This is before budgets. I was like, we should go to many countries per episode, like, because the whole idea is that it's a universal philosophy, and so wherever you go it will be proven. So I wanted to go, for example, for salt, I wanted to go to Belize, where the world's largest salt flats are, and then also to Japan, so that you can be in these like two totally different places and see that the same sort of principles were in action. But that didn't happen. And so and, so executives, what can I say? But but ultimately I was really happy. One thing that was really important to me was to not focus too much on Europe and the Western countries, and I wanted to sort of try to spread things around the world. I did really want to go to Iran, and to me, that was going to be acid. Obviously, Iranian food is very acidic. We are obsessed with sourness, and we came very close to going, but at the last second, just some things happened politically that made it really challenging for us to go. So what was kind of curious though was that we shifted gears at the very last second and switched to Mexico, but so many of the ingredients we were going to do sour oranges in Iran, and we just did sour oranges in Mexico. Like, and so, and Mexico was always the other place that I wanted to go if we couldn't go to Iran for acidity. So I was really happy to go there. And also, like, I have a friend who from Mexico. She's always been like, if we cut you open, there's like Mexican food will fall out of you. So it's like in your heart. So, so I was very happy to go there. But no, I feel like, to me, I just feel so lucky that I got to travel and meet new people and see, and have experiences that were different than I think the kinds of things that I had seen before on food TV. And it was really important for me to show the different kinds of cooks and different kinds of people than I had traditionally seen on food TV, because I think that can paint only a very narrow picture of like what it is to be a great chef, or what it is to be, to like have something valuable to say. And my goal is to sort of expand that.
That seeing those images in Japan of all of those artisan craftsmen making those ingredients with so much love and care and respect. That was so fascinating that you can weave in so many layers by incorporating these craftsmen that are so committed.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. We had so much help on that Japan episode from locals who really knew the landscape and really just were so familiar with people who have been doing really incredible work. And it was one of my favorite things actually about that Japan episode, and probably like one of my favorite takeaways and things I'm like strangely the most proud of in a way, like about the show, is so my friend Yuri, who's in that episode, she's the chef I go on the little salt seaweed adventure with, and then later she cooks fish with me. She and our friend Taichi, who's not really in the show, he let's see, so they had traveled across Japan maybe 2 or 3 times with us over the course of our filming, which was a week. Like they had basically interrupted their lives to go out of their way to do all of this work with us and be on this show. And we weren't paying them anything. Like, they really went out of their way to do a lot of work with us. They were so generous and so incredible. And so they were amazing. And I remember we were so exhausted at the end on the last day, and I was like, you guys, I don't understand, like, why did you do this? Why did you, like, give me so much of yourselves and give me so much of your energy? Like, I'm so grateful to you, but I don't deserve this from you. And they said, oh, we didn't do this for you. They were like, the people in Japan, for us, we value, unfortunately, actually, we have such little, almost sort of national self-confidence that we care so much what the West thinks of us, that it was important to us to have you value these disappearing traditions, because we knew that it would create like a national pride here in our country for preserving things like this soy sauce that's disappearing, and this salt, these traditions that are disappearing. And so, I mean, there is a lot of sort of complicated things in that. Like, I wish that's, but like, sort of colonizing sort of self-hatred didn't exist or whatever. But if I could be like, if something that I did could be a force for good, and ultimately, create awareness and like a market for supporting something like that soy sauce, which honestly is the only soy sauce I buy anymore. It's so incredibly delicious. And I feel like here in the Bay Area, and when I've been to New York, when I've been to other big cities, I've seen a lot more of those double brewed, like wooden barrel aged soy sauces in the last few years. Like, I feel like there is a market now being created for them. Then that would make me so proud and so happy. It's really awesome.
Incredible impact. I mean, that's really fantastic, Samin.
Thank you. Should we mention really quickly to everyone? There is a little but it's in the chat now. But just to all of our audience members, there is a Q&A function in the Zoom, and you can leave a question. If you have a question for me, I guess, or us, you can leave a question, and not in the chat, but in the Q&A thing. You can click at the bottom, and then other people can upvote, and then the most popular questions, we'll leave a little bit of time in the last 10 minutes, and we'll answer audience questions.
Thanks, Samin.
Oh, sure thing. I'll take care of it, Eric.
Yeah, you got it.
Technically proficient. We barely made it on to the webinar, so.
You guys don't need me.
But Samin, I wanted to ask you, just with the last several months, with everything being, just so, I mean, everyone's been impacted in some way, some more than others, but in your day-to-day life, I mean, it seems like you've had a lot of positive things come out of it. I mean, with the podcast, lasagna making, it sounds like you've been working on the book, What to Cook, and gardening. Do I understand correctly that?
The garden, I would say, is the most probably prolific, where I've been the most prolific.
and were you gardening before? Were you a gardener before, or is this a new project for you?
I've been gardening maybe, I think, 6 or 7 years now. I mean, I started in I moved to where I live now a year ago. So and here, this is the first time I have like a ground to plant in. But before this, I lived in a little apartment, so I just had this like ever expanding collection of containers, which I got pretty good at, like having kind of a good harvest. And so I had flowers and beans and tomatoes and all sorts of different things. And I, as a perfectionist immigrant child, remember in the beginning, in the very beginning of gardening, I was like, well, this is, I don't want to garden when I'm just like a tenant somewhere, because then I'll have to like leave this stuff behind, and like, what a waste is that? Like, and which is just like the worst way to think about it. Like, of course you just want to, like, gardening isn't about the thing. It's about the whole experience, the time. It's like, it's not about like the thing you leave behind at all, like at all. It's about the whole process is really where the joy and all of the value of it is. So that was one major mistake. And then later I was like, oh man, I really don't feel good about all of the stuff that, it just feels like such a waste because I keep killing stuff. And I feel like it's just, I'm so bad at this. Like, I keep killing stuff. And this master gardener was like, no, that's a huge part of it. It's like, you're going to kill so much stuff Like you're gonna mess up so much stuff. That's what gardening is like there's gonna be a huge learning curve for you where you figure out like what's too much sun, what's not enough sun, what's too much water, what's not enough water. Like maybe it's like something's too hot for where you are, too cold or whatever, you know. And I think that familiarity and that sort of like paying attention is that's the gardening. And so for me it's like having something to like go outside and have a relationship to. And yeah, it's kind of somebody, yeah, it's just it's the opposite of so many things in my life, which are like faster, faster, harder, 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 you know. It's like slower, slower, like yeah. There's and so it's been a very healing thing. And I feel really, really lucky. Yeah.
Samin, you want to jump in and answer a few questions before we
For
have to go?
sure. Happily.
Okay.
Happily.
We got a lot of them starting to pile up here, and we don't have very much time. So
Okay.
I'll start with the first one. Samin, we are curious about Fava
Oh,
Bean. Could we see
I'm
her?
so sorry. Fava's not here right now. I sent her away because she's so naughty. I worry she would be really disturbed. She would cause a disturbance, so she's not here. I'm sorry.
So let's go to the second one. It says, what is your go-to meal, or what do you make when you don't feel like cooking? Or what do
Okay.
you, when you just need some quick comfort food?
Okay, my go-to meal, like that I make probably at least once a week, is well, the true answer is popcorn with nutritional yeast, but but the like slightly healthier is I make rice in the rice cooker, and then there is this. I wrote a column about this, so you can find, and maybe we actually, Gary, if you're in here, you can stick the link in the chat. But I make this dish. I call it Mara's tofu. My friend Mara taught me how to make this tofu from her childhood, which is so simple and delicious. And it's basically this like hippie dish, which I did not grow up eating tofu. It was not a thing that like it has ever felt like so delicious and yummy to me. But this combination of things is like so strangely just like so delicious. So it's medium firm tofu that you slice into maybe like centimeter thick pieces, and she drizzles this Bragg's liquid aminos, which is kind of like a hippie version of soy sauce. It's unfermented soy sauce. If you don't have that, you can use soy sauce. And then she like fries it in coconut oil in the pan. And because it's the medium firm tofu, it gets it gets kind of custardy, like a scrambled, like a omelet text, like a custard texture on the center. But the coconut oil gets so hot that the outside gets this like lacy, crisp texture. So I usually eat like that tofu, which is just like umami deliciousness and crisp, like combination of textures, rice, and then whatever like boiled broccoli or like sauteed broccoli or spinach. Just like that is my like simplest dinner. I have it at least once a week, and it makes me feel so happy and not like I'm gonna die.
Okay. I have a question from Jessica Moody, and she says, I have a 5-year-old who eats almost anything, including okra and Brussels sprouts and tofu, but a husband who is pickier. How can I get him to fall in love with seasoned vegetables he's hesitant to love or even try?
Interesting husband. Okay. I think to me, I don't know, Frank, you guys weigh in on this one. I think it's all about two things. One is I think roasting, like getting the things brown and caramely is a first step, because like that getting it sort of crispy on the outside, brown and caramely on browning. You just want that browning, and sweetness is always going to make things more like attractive. But then because then you've created the sweetness, you want to create a nice contrast with some sort of a dressing, and that's where like the condiment deliciousness comes in. So like some sort of side thing to dip it in. So if he's like very picky, as in he has like very, very sort of like simple tastes of like a child, sorry husband, then maybe you want to create something that's like reminiscent of like dipping. It's like a sweet potato that you dip then in yogurty sauce. Or if he's a little more adventurous, then maybe you dress like those roasted sweet potatoes or roasted vegetables with like a like something like a balsamic vinegar dressing, like, you know, the sweet and sour dressing or something like that, or a honey vinaigrette or a mustard honey vinaigrette. but I think you kind of want to build sweet and sour or fat and sweet and sour in there. But and definitely do some like roasting. Those are the tricks I would offer.
Awesome.
I'm getting
I have
it.
a question from Clay Morrison, and this one is for Frank and Pardis. Yes, I'd love to know what Pardis and Samin's favorite Iranian restaurants are in America.
Ooh.
Mine is not really a restaurant. It's my parents' home. I haven't been to too many Persian restaurants in the States. I think I'm just totally spoiled because my mother still cooks Persian food for me. So yeah,
and she's incredible.
Yeah.
You know, the kuku sabzi and
Mhm.
Oh, I
all
bet.
stews. It's just phenomenal.
yeah, yeah. There's an
I
eggplant
bet.
stew called khoresh balamjun, which I love so much. And another little adaptation for my mom is because it's typically served with sour grapes, which is part of the acid that we use in Persian cooking. But my mom has discovered that that very young muscadine grapes work as well.
No,
So
I love that kind of stuff. Using like the local version. That's so cool.
yeah.
We
That's
have
so cool.
those growing at our farm, and so
Yeah.
it's
So I mean, because you growing up on the West Coast, I think you had access to more Persian
Yeah,
restaurants.
we had endless. My mom is an amazing cook, and so my mom's rule is like she wouldn't let us eat anything out in the world that she could make. So we only were allowed to eat at cello kebabis, like which are like the kebab restaurants, or like when we went to a Persian restaurant, she never let us order food that was like home the stuff she would have made at home. So we were only allowed to order like rice and kebabs. So I think probably most of the kebab places that I mean, at this point I'm not so familiar with any of them anymore, but like you can just go up and down Westwood Boulevard and it would all be delicious. But one incredible Persian restaurant that I have loved recently in the last couple of years is in Brooklyn, and it's called Sofre,
Yeah,
and
yes.
it's so good. It's
Yes.
really, I thought that was really exquisite, and I really loved the people who run it, and it felt a lot like eating in someone's home, which I really loved.
My sisters have been there. We have not been there yet, but when we can travel again to New York, we
Yeah.
will.
Samin, this is an interesting question. This is from Sophie Burge. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. She says, "Thanks, Samin. You are amazing. What are your top 3 favorite kitchen gadgets or items?"
Okay, let's see. I would say, I wish I was down there right now. I would show you. Okay, I have probably the thing I use every day, and I am like feel lost without is like a $2.50 Xylus peeler. It's like some cheap Y-shaped vegetable peeler. Anytime I'm in a kitchen that has like the classic vegetable peeler that makes you hold your hand, like that's just like the old school ones, I'm like, no, 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 no. I like the Y-shaped ones because they're much more ergonomic. I also I love my cast iron pan. It's always on my stove. I use it for everything. And I also use my mortar and pestle for everything.
They're asking me to wrap up, you guys.
Okay.
So we do have another event that we have to go to. So this was amazing. I really hate that you couldn't be here with us, Samin.
Me too. Next year.
But I'm already making plans in my mind on how I can get you back so that we can meet face to face and you can meet the people in our community and
I would love nothing more.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Frank and Pardis, for doing this.
Thank you so much, Frank and Pardis.
Thank you.
It's amazing. It couldn't have worked out better that you guys already knew each other.
So awesome.
So it's awesome. So thanks to everyone who's watching, and check out our website for all the other events that we have coming up for the remainder of the season. And thank you guys for being here.
Thanks to the wonderful audience. Thank you for all your questions.
Bye.
Take care.